Hello, and welcome to From the Pink Seats podcast here on the State of Louisville Podcast Network. Producer Keith in the house with you tonight, and in a little bit of a twist, Vince Lococo not here. We got the one, the only, you know him, you love him, you're probably familiar with his basketball takes, Jacob Lane.
What's up, man? That's nice.
Hey.
Nice to be introed into the show like that. Hello. Hello.
You just get to sit back, relax, enjoy. I decided to not break out like the borderline Yeti scream intro.
That's right. And look, I don't know what to do here. I look short tonight, man. I look like a little kid compared to you. I don't know how to fix this. I got to sit on a pillow.
Short kings are all the rage nowadays, so people don't like us tallies.
How's the weather up there?
Rainy and now humid.
That's right. Well, we got a lot of football, don't we, man? I mean, not really, but kind of, right? In our world, football never stops, so there's always something out there to talk about.
We'll make it seem like there's a lot of football for you.
There's a lot of football for you. There's not a whole lot, but we're going to talk about football tonight here on From the Pink Seats podcast. Make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button right here below us, State of Louisville channel. If you're here for the first time, welcome. We've got a lot of great material for you across the network. Basketball, football, baseball, a lot going on right now in the land of Louisville. But tonight we will stick to football, and we will dive into some news from the transfer portal. We'll roll out Portal Kombat 2.0 tonight, talk about Louisville's latest commitment, as well as get into some of the storylines around the ACC and college football. And, of course, the segment that you know and you love, What Are You Talking About? Where we'll look at some of the things that are happening outside of Louisville that has our attention. So, Keith, how are you, man? Good to see you. I like the hair tonight.
I decided not to tie it up, not to wear a hat, just to, prove that I do have it and that it's not like a Stephen A. Smith hairline situation. I just have an honest widow's peak. But not doing well. Actually, did some fun stuff for State of Louisville earlier this week. If you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, I don't know when it's going to be coming out, but I'm really excited for when it does, and looking forward to some of the summer content we're going to be bringing your way.
Yeah, that's a great little self-plug there. I appreciate that. You are, Papa's proud, I might say. But no, it's great. A lot of content that's, outside of our three shows. One thing that we've done at State of Louisville is we've really tried to live that every sports fan in Louisville is just a little bit different, right? Like, not everybody that likes football likes baseball year round. Not everybody that likes baseball likes football, right? So we've created these shows with really great hosts that are diving really deep into, the everything Louisville, just like we do, right? But with Keith and with Presley and Vince and some of the other folks, it's great, in partnership with Floyd Street Media and some of these projects to get out and do some different things, including golf, eating. Keith is really is there something
I'm good
fun
at eating
happening over there? I think I want to host that. So yeah, great content. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, and you're going to see some of that hopefully this weekend. If you're watching the show, maybe that's out right now. I think there's a little tab right here next to me that you can click on that says your videos or videos you may like. Hop in there. Check out Keith Golf with a former college golfer. And we have more shows, more stuff coming out. Go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, no, I was just laughing that you didn't mention one of the specific sports that we have in the podcast network that maybe people aren't interested in that.
Yeah? Which one is that? Which one did I miss?
Round ball. Something like that.
Yeah.
The one that the soft kids play because they can't play football.
The ones that can jump high and defend, go and play that sport. That's right. No, but basketball, football, baseball. You're right. You got them all, man. All the round balls, even the oval ones too. And speaking of the oval ones, let's talk about that tonight. Louisville football. We've been covering the portal the last couple of months since spring ball, or I guess leading up to spring ball, and then of course right after spring ball. Louisville is up to, I think they have 43 new additions via the portal. And the recruiting class of 2025. It's 43, 44. I have it tracked and I don't have it pulled up in front of me. But that number is growing by one. And so let's jump into it. Portal Kombat. Let's do it, Keith. Louisville's latest commitment comes shortly after our show last week. It was on our show sheet to actually cover last week and decided, there's already 4 other commitments. Let's hold off and maybe something will pop here. And that's exactly what happens. Louisville picks up a big commitment from a tight end out of Oklahoma. And for me, Keith, I love I'm going to let you dive into the specifics here, but I love players coming from the big names in college football, the Floridas, the Oklahomas, the Alabamas, the Georgias. Obviously, I get not just because you go there doesn't mean you're a good player, but I love being able to tap into schools that bring in really talented players, and maybe they just need a new scene, maybe a new coach. So what is Louisville getting, Keith, in the commitment out of Oklahoma?
Yeah, so it's sort of a unique one with Davon Mitchell. I love this as a low risk, super high upside investment for you finance enthusiasts who are watching the show. This is a kid who, coming out of high school, he was a high 4-star rated prospect out of Los Alamitos, California, had offers from all the major programs, like I think Bama, Georgia, Oklahoma, Texas, goes to Oklahoma. And he was also a kid who reclassified, much like TJ Capers with our program. He was a 2025 kid, reclassed to 2024. So he's showing up on a college campus, either 17 or a fresh 18 years old. Didn't play his freshman year, didn't play last year, I believe. And you ask people affiliated with the Oklahoma side who aren't just being the obnoxious homers, they'll say, yeah, it was sort of maturity issues, which... Look, if you're a 17, 18-year-old kid, you don't want to see it, but it's understandable if you're having those issues from a freshman who should be a senior in high school. Right. But enough about off the field. On the field, though, this is a bona fide prototype NFL tight end. High 4-star kid, so he was projected to be like a day 3 draft pick as a high school prospect coming out. He's got the size. I believe he's listed 6'4", 6'5" now. He was 245 pounds coming out of high school. I believe he's up to 265, 270 now. So he's got that massive frame, so you can utilize him in the run game. But in high school, he was also an athlete. Like the team he played on, they would just line him up as a slot receiver, put him out wide, let him run routes, make plays. Because of that frame and his athleticism, he's a nightmare matchup for almost anyone you put on him. He's too big for D-backs to cover. He's too fast for linebackers to cover. So you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't with this kid. Extremely, extremely talented, but needs to grow up. Needs to find a program where he can buy in, get invested, grow, and develop. And if that happens here, we could have a stud on our hands. And if it doesn't, we still have 3 or 4 tight ends now with eligibility on the roster still next season.
Yeah, this is, like you said, low risk, high reward. You bring in a kid who probably, it seems maybe maturity-wise jumped in a little too early into college football, reclassifying. I even seen it had been rated as a 5-star in some recruiting classes before he reclassed to 2024. You're talking about one of the best players in the country at his position. Comes in, I'm sure, in this day and age with NIL with some sort of ego and expectation as to what he is going to be at Oklahoma. It doesn't pan out. And then you get into a situation like you had with TJ Capers at Louisville, where he's called out by his position coach coordinator and challenged, responds to that, but goes through some challenges before spring and ultimately kind of packs it up and goes the opposite way. Kind of, I will say, I don't want to say quitting, but dropping out during spring ball, going into the portal. So there's definitely some issues here off of the field, maybe maturity wise, that need to be getting cleaned up. But I think you're taking a chance on a kid who didn't commit a crime, didn't do anything, in terms of that bad standing with the team or school. Just needs to grow up and understand kind of the opportunity at hand for him.
Yeah, a situation where a change of scenery could do both parties good, honestly, because you see what Oklahoma was going through as a program last year. Brent Venables going to have the pressure really ramped up next season to succeed, or he could be out the door. So maybe he's looking for someone who can give him more immediate help at the tight end position, open up a scholarship spot. Let's Mitchell get out, find somewhere that's willing to put in the time to develop him, who doesn't necessarily have that same level of pressure applied. So it's a situation where both sides could really benefit. Now, I will say, so you go through and you scroll and you look up, and like whenever we get a kid from like a major program, I try to see like what fans of that program said. the haters had one really good joke. Like, there was a lot of lame stuff, like looser stuff, talking trash about a kid. But there was one, and I wish I could remember the handle. He made his player comp Kelvin Benjamin, if you remember his time. And I'm like, damn.
And there's, it's funny because at that level, you don't often see guys in the NFL. If you folks don't remember, Kelvin Benjamin was a great player at Florida State, top 15 pick in the NFL, had several great years with the Panthers and Cam Newton. And then essentially ate his way out of the league. He Eddie Lacy'd himself, some might say, right?
Was it Booger McFarland who said he was a Popeye's biscuit away from being a tight end? Because he was a wide receiver.
Right. I mean, there have been some guys over the years that have ballooned in their career and dealt with weight issues. You see it right now, the jokes with Zion Williamson, right? Like there's
Justin Blackmon after his career, that was a wild one.
Right. Yeah, right. Just saw that.
I ballooned after my career.
Yeah, you have some guys that go the direction of Eric Wood, right? And then you have guys otherwise who, deal with weight issues. And I'm not trying to make light of the situation. Look, because at the end of the day, there are, people who deal with this and it's a very serious issue. But for this kid, it seems like, let's just call it the freshman 15, if you will, Keith. I think that maybe I'm guilty of the freshman 15. I think I might have picked up a freshman 35 or 40. So I certainly can't say anything about Davon Mitchell. But in terms of kind of what this can be for Louisville this year, you mentioned it, right? So you have a tight end room that probably features a starter and backup of Nate Kariski and Jacob Stewart. Now we'll obviously see how things shake out, but then you throw in really intriguing matchup problems with Jaleel Skinner and now with Davon Mitchell, and then you have CJ Jacobson who comes via Utah. So you have a lot of options out there at tight end that can do different things for Jeff Brom. But there's one thing that really stood out to me. Now, I know Brent Venables has not been the coach that he was billed to be and has not had the success at Oklahoma, but I believe in the talent analysis. Oklahoma has continued to bring in really talented players, and obviously we know what he did at Clemson for all those years. But the quote, he said that one of our most important commitments was Davon Mitchell. He's got the size, speed, the athletic ability, the versatility at the position that is really going to give us something unique in that tight end room. I don't think anything in that has changed about Davon Mitchell. And I think that's the exciting part. Now, can you coach through the stubbornness, the young ego, the guy trying to prove himself, chip on his shoulder? Can you get his mind right? Can you get him I'm going to put Vince LeCoco hat on for a second, right? What would he say, Keith? He would say, is he going to be in the playbook? Is he going to be learning the janitor's name? Is he going to be, going out for team nights on Thursday nights at the coaches' houses? Is he going to be doing the little things that matter in this program to be successful? And that will ultimately decide whether this is a boom or a bust. And I'm okay with that at this point in the portal and what your need was entering, post spring ball at tight end.
Yeah. I mean, it was a banged up room, but we've got a very deep room at this point. We've doubled in size. And I think right now Stewart is the only one who's out of eligibility after the season. So we're still going to have a full cupboard in the tight end room come next season, barring anything unforeseen.
Is this your Jamari Johnson replacement right here? I mean, physically, you're looking at him. I'll give you another name. Vince might choke me if he heard me say this. And I don't know, maybe he might agree with me also, though. He might give me a dab. It's one of those, like if you watch The Office, Daryl and Andy, when Andy won't stop texting Daryl and he says, you're one bad text away from getting blocked. And Andy says, but I'm one good text away from a high five. That's me and Vince right now with this. Kemari Averett was a guy, came to Louisville 6'6", 6'7". Mitchell doesn't have that type of height, but was 250, 260, could go play out wide, could play inside, could block, was physical, was super talented, and then ran into issues off of the field. So that's another player comp for you.
Are you sure he doesn't have that kind of height? He signed with an SEC school, so I assume you grow 3 inches when that happens.
That's right. You go from 6'9", 6'10" to 7'3", So I'm going to start listing every Louisville athlete 2 inches taller, giving them that, with shoes and Louisville Cardinal credentials in their box score or in their player roster sheet. I wouldn't say this is it. We might have 1 or 2 more guys come in late. We saw that last year. Last thoughts on one more position of need, or if there's another player, and then just overall the job they've done with the portal.
Maybe the staff disagrees with me. I still would like to see one more corner on the roster as opposed to just a bona fide safety, but the staff seems to be content with what they've brought in. There are a few decent depth level player D-backs available in the portal. Like, I'm doing a quick perusal now just to see if there any sort of secret rock star who might be available in the portal. But at this point, I think most of the cream has been skimmed off the top. So I assume we're going to get one or two more depth adds. I believe right now, I was looking at a piece from Jody Demling who said we were at, I think, 71 scholarships currently. Now, that's not factoring in assuming we give Jaden Minkins and a kicker and a punter a scholarship. So if you factor in those three, that puts us at 84. The limit's 100.
Right.
But
Yeah.
Louisville's looking to stay right around that 85 number. So maybe we go one down this year, or maybe I see them try to bring in one additional guy. Maybe if someone gets injured during like off-season weight training, just so happen to pick up a kid before the fall starts. But at this point, I'm nervous about the D-backs, but as a whole, I like the way our roster's shaping up. I think I can see the vision for what type of football we're going to play in the upcoming year. So
how would you, okay, great question, or great point here. Define that vision for me. What is the Louisville football vision for 2025?
Offensively, stay on schedule. Don't eat negative plays. Leverage your veteran quarterback play and your dynamic trio of running backs to keep the offense on schedule. We're not going to go out trying to put up 50, 60 points a game. We're looking to put up 35 to 40 minutes of possession a game through just long, methodical drives down the field. And that doesn't mean we're running a wing tee and we're ground pounding the ball. Honestly, like a West Coast offense is what I expect to see this year. Route trees developing to create guys open underneath, maybe taking a shot with Bell or Trayshawn Hurry going downfield to make something happen. But I don't expect us to be the super up-tempo, crazy pace team. And then on the defensive side of the ball, I think we're going to make it a living nightmare for teams trying to run the ball against us. And we're essentially going to dare teams to throw the ball 40, 50 times a game.
And there is your Achilles heel. There is your weakness going into the year of is Rodney Johnson, Jabari Mack, and the transfers you bring in there combined with some of the guys you bring back. Is that enough? Is it enough? I don't know yet. Obviously I don't know yet. If I did, I'd be probably making as much money as Jeff Brom, but I don't. And so that is the storyline that we're watching going in is, can this secondary in current format not only be good enough, but can they be great? And can they help win football games? Because if they can, Keith, I feel really confident in that D-line. I feel really confident that we're going to have an NFL caliber linebacker and Stanquan Clark. And then the rest of that back end just hold up. No big plays. Like, we can't be 50, 60, 70-yard chunk plays and having the offense go out and then, 3 and out. Yeah, we just don't want to run into that.
I also think the front seven's going to be challenged into generating and actually getting home when it comes to creating pressure. Last year, it was a good stat, but it was a really annoying stat, how we were always top of the country in pressures, but we were nowhere to be found when it came to sacks for any individuals or team totals. So this is going to be like a challenge for AJ Green, Clev Lubin, Wes Bailey. Get home, make some sacks. And I think with our defensive scheme this year, it's entirely possible one of those guys ends up with double-digit sacks in this upcoming season, just because we're going to be facing a lot of passing.
Yeah, I hope so. Look, I loved the addition of Clev Lubin. He is a guy that had great speed, had that incredible spin move, is super athletic. But we see the jump from mid-level schools to high-level schools all the time not go the way that the film shows it does. And with AJ Green, he's got all the talent in the world. The dude looks like Alden Smith. He is built like a outside linebacker and a 3-4 that is built to get after the quarterback. But can he mature? Can he step into a starting role? I don't know. Behind them, who else it is, but there's a number of options, and it's all about those. I think I said in the offseason, it's going to be a lot about how the margins develop for this team. Like, is the fourth guy, the third guy good enough, or is the first guy that much better than everybody else, or do you have 3, 4, 5 guys that you can roll out there?
We got a long offseason to talk and to speculate, and I'm sure we're going to dive in and talk about the position groups as we go on, so let's not get stuck in the mud too much, but it's an exciting offseason.
It is. It is. And there's not a lot of huge star power to it, but it is a very deep class with a lot of talent in there. So, all right, Portal Combat, close that up here, and let's move right along because, Keith, when we talk about news outside of Louisville, I don't think we've covered that as much in years past as we probably should, but there's been a lot of news around just really the day and age of college football and the era we're entering where NIL is king. Universities are bringing money back in house. You need an insane amount of revenue. We're talking about roster limits and roster management. We're talking about the House settlement. We're talking about Donald Trump. Like, we're talking about what other names can I just throw out on the bingo? Like Michael Scott's involved. We got folks going to the moon. I mean, at this point, I could just say whatever, and it would be about right in college football and in this world of college sports. Well, let's start with one thing that really I thought was really interesting, and I'm curious your perspective on this because you're much more in the weeds than I am. But on the surface, this looks really, really weird to me, and that is the deal that Clemson and Notre Dame football struck during earlier this week. And it is I believe a 10-year series, a 12-year series between these two schools. And if I'm not mistaken, and this might be where my green naiveness comes in of college football, I don't believe Notre Dame has signed individual deals with ACC schools recently. Have they? Because I feel like they're on that rotation where they play teams like 2 years every 4 or something like that.
So this is part of the deal that came out of the agreement with Clemson and Florida State and their lawsuits against the ACC, was that essentially the ACC was going to create means because you have the time slot champs bonus, as I've been dubbing it, but basically the more eyeballs you get, the more you get paid.
Right.
And that on top of already being nationally recognizable brands, the ACC wanted to work with those institutions to create more marquee matchups through leveraging the conference's relationship with Notre Dame. Now, when you look at the signing, there was also included language afterwards where it's like, yeah, they anticipate a similar relationship with like Florida State and Miami to create more matchups with them as well, at least through 2036 when the current ACC deal ends. So I haven't seen anything on the back end of like, okay, who's giving up their Notre Dame games? I believe it was last year, Virginia forfeit one of their upcoming games with Notre Dame, and SMU took them up on taking that spot. So could it be the ACC just, hey, you have perpetually sucked. You're at the bottom of the league. We're taking your Notre Dame game and we're giving it to one of our 3 brand teams. Well, yes. Very well could be it. If they start to take Notre Dame games off of Louisville's plate, that's where I sort of start to get pissed off.
And I think that's very fair, right? I think we can all agree, like, take Boston College off their schedule, for the love of God. Like, let's do that, right? Like, take
I love that.
Right. I'm sure you do love that. You football nerd. Get out of here. I don't want to watch Boston College and freaking Notre Dame.
No, it's the only other Catholic school in the FBS. So, of course, they have a rivalry with Boston College, so they wouldn't want to give that up.
Sure.
And, of course, Notre Dame has to play both service academies.
Right. And maybe for his first act, the Pope steps in and mandates that the American Pope steps in now. Let me just throw some respect on his name here for a second. Steps in as a true Chicagoan. I guarantee you he's a Notre Dame fan.
1,000,000%.
We've got
a Catholic in Chicago. Yeah, he's a Notre Dame fan.
Right. Is the sky blue? Exactly. Right. But I think that maybe we need to get Notre Dame Louisville every single year, or
I would love that.
Look, I have been saying this for 2 or 3 years now. I would love nothing more. I would beg, I would plead, Firefest old man meme, right? Like, for Notre Dame Louisville week 0 in Ireland. Do you understand how much beer I would drink on that island? Like, do you understand? Going to Ireland a week before the season starts, you get a preseason run in a week 0 game in Ireland. In all seriousness, that's why this is weird to me. Individual deals being signed, I totally think it benefits the ACC. You need more eyeballs right now, and Notre Dame has them built in everywhere. It's like if teams just mandated they had to play the Yankees, right? Like 3 times, once a quarter, you got to play the Yankees, Yeah,
I don't think it benefits the ACC so much as it benefits Clemson, Florida State, Miami. Now, the ACC had their chance to try and leverage to make Notre Dame a full member when we had the COVID season, but no, they decided to be nice. That's another complaint for another day. So I'm waiting to see more on how this develops before I really develop some sort of feelings about it. Because Clemson, Notre Dame, those games have been fun. Those have been really good games, sometimes with very high national stakes. But if it comes at the expense of Louisville, even if it's Louisville making a trip to South Bend, screw that. That sucks. So,
man, I don't know. I tend to disagree on that. It is a regional game. It's travelable for fans. We've seen fans go up there and make an impact. I think if you're talking about Louisville, Notre Dame, that would be incredible. Not every year, but if you're going home and home for a 10-year
no.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying Notre Dame Clemson makes sense. I like it as long as it doesn't cost us Louisville Notre Dame matchups.
Sure, yes.
The second we lose a game to Notre Dame because Clemson gets to play it instead, I'm going to be livid.
Yeah, I'm right there with you because you only have so many good games, and that is one that you can have on your schedule, and it's obviously typically a top 10, 15 opponent gives you the opportunity of Louisville to have another chance to become a college football playoff team. So we definitely want to see more of that. Moving along here in the same space of college football and just the landscape of where we're at, headlines last week came out of a meeting with Donald Trump and Nick Saban sitting down to talk sports. At this point, like I'm not trying to go the political route here, but Donald Trump's like, I'm just going to get into a little bit of every industry, and I'm just going to change one thing that everybody's complaining about, and then half the people will love me and half the people will hate me. It's a numbers game, right? Like eventually, you win enough. But Trump says that there needs to be some form of reform in college sports. I don't necessarily agree that having Nick Saban in your ear is the person that's going to lead us in the right direction, based off of Nick Saban's end at Alabama and some of his comments around NIL. Great football coach, great mind. I think he would be very, very much a huge person to have in the room. But like they've started to do, build out that committee, that panel that has former players, that has conference member leadership, things that are just not Nick Saban. Okay, like you know what I mean?
Yeah. So, a little bit of a spoiler alert for later in the show. This was actually going to be my "What are you talking about?" So I will keep my thoughts more short here and develop a bit more later in that segment, but I wouldn't expect too much to come from it. Nick Saban's a splashy name who the casual college football fan's just going to see, oh, he's talking to Nick Saban. College football is going to be fixed. I don't think it's going to be that simple. I'll dive more in depth later, closer to the end of the episode, where people who don't want to talk about economics can just jump out.
If you replaced the name Nick Saban with Tommy Tuberville, the take it would be the thoughts and belief on what NIL should be would be probably pretty similar, if you're catching my drift here. So I think that we just need the college sports is in a very fragile position right now, and the wrong folks getting involved and putting their hands on things that don't belong. I think that it's troubling for the future of college sports.
Yes. And I mean, that's what got us in this hole to begin with. TV executives TV executives, people in suits trying to just create, alter, and shape what college athletics and what college football specifically is. So I don't see this going well. Well, frankly, I don't see this going anywhere, but we'll talk more later.
Sure. I'm right there with you. Okay.
One thing I do want to talk about, though, to sort of slide back to the ACC sort of thing, one of the recent changes on the basketball side was the ACC changing to reduce the amount of conference games being played, in theory, to allow teams to go out and schedule more out-of-conference matchups. I don't necessarily think that's the greatest fix, but it allows your marquee teams to go out and try to schedule a couple more marquee games. So depending on the result, so say the ACC just knocks it out of the park in basketball this year, and we get like 10 teams into the tournament or something crazy like that. Do you see the ACC potentially looking at either reducing or expanding the current conference football schedule from 8 games, how it is currently, to a 7-game or a 9-game conference slate?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've gone back and forth on this because I think in basketball, you have more margin for error. You can lose a game, a marquee game, a quad 1 game, if you will, and it helps you in some regards, right? It doesn't absolutely hurt you.
I would argue if you have the right team name, going out and losing a close game can also help you in football.
Fair.
Unfortunately, this isn't an Alabama podcast.
That's very fair, right? Several schools can probably throw themselves in the ring for being guilty of that, or being, I guess, the recipient of that, right? But I think that in college football, for the ACC to go out and add another, or to remove a conference game in favor of a non-conference game, it would go one of two ways. Teams would schedule cupcakes to try to pull the Indiana route and win as many games as you can and be undefeated or 11-1, and take your 5-0 conference schedule against Kent State, FCS Northwest Sharks, against, you know what I'm talking about, like just stacking games and maybe getting one Power 4 win. And I think that teams are still trying to kind of figure out how to rig the 12-game playoff, and how is scheduling and strength of schedule going to be the ultimate thing, or is it going to be wins? Is it going to be, what's going to move the needle? So I think in this stage, like if they go to 7 and say Louisville adds a matchup against, let's just say they West Virginia, or let's just say they add a Oklahoma State, or they add a team from a Big 12, a Big 10,
Cincinnati,
Iowa,
UCF,
right, and Iowa, right? Whatever, somebody in that range, and they lose that's tough to your schedule. Now Louisville's scheduling tougher already, but if you add a 5th game, and let's just say, for example, they have Notre Dame, Kentucky, which that game is also on the line for now because the SEC could be going to add other games in conference to help them out. There's a lot of moving pieces. I think right now that removing a game would hurt them more than it would help them. And I don't think going to 9 does much of anything, unless you can somehow find a way to get Notre Dame in the mix. And that's it. That's the only way I think that works.
So I believe right now Notre Dame currently is, I think they're obligated to schedule 5 ACC games annually. I would like, if you go to a 9-game conference schedule, I would love to work Notre Dame like, hey, we're going to a 9-game conference schedule. Notre Dame, you're a member, and everything else, you're scheduling a 6th game with an ACC team. And it can be, let's just say, Florida State, Clemson, Miami, or ACC champion of the previous year. And that's sort of how you go about dangling a carrot to get Notre Dame to sign up for that. I would love to see it solely because I hate bye games, especially in football. I absolutely hate them because you don't really get a live look if you're a first team because you're just overwhelming competition more times than not. And I get it. It's a necessary evil because bye games are something that's absolutely necessary for smaller programs in order to fund their whole athletic department. I mean, right. Hell, Kent State borderline abuses their football team every year. Look at their 4 non-conference games, and it's 3 trips to hell and then an FCS team every single year. And that's how they make their athletics budget. I get that it's a necessary evil, and I've rallied against the Super League on this show. If there's one thing that a Super League schedule would do right, it's that you don't have those bye games. You don't have those cupcake games. You have to bring your A game every single week. It's like what the SEC likes to talk about, even though it's not really real because 2/3 of that league is always mid as hell. Right. So I'd love to have a 9-game ACC schedule. Do I think it's feasible? No. Do I necessarily think it would improve a team's playoff odds? No, unless one of the teams they add are one of the top 5, maybe 6 teams in the conference and Notre Dame.
What if, let me throw a scenario. I forget which conference did this a couple years ago in basketball. It might have been the Conference USA or one of the leagues. What they did, maybe it was the MAC. At the end of the year, they used their final 2 or 3 games as a kind of a round robin pool, and their teams, they matched up their teams and their best teams played each other, and it was to strengthen, I believe, their strength of schedules and to help them have better chances at winning a game. What if that 9th game was a matchup of kind of, a pairing or smattering of teams that are the best teams? Louisville gets matched up with, a Miami, maybe even if it's a second time, and you play somebody based off of where you finish in the league.
So I would think it would have to be something that would be determined like the year prior or 2 years before prior, just because with travel and honestly just coaches game prep, the maniacal levels they do, I wouldn't want to see a regular season rematch, but you could work it out to where, okay, this team came in first, they play the second, third, fourth, they don't have the fifth team on their already predetermined schedule. Boom, you play 1 and 5. You guys are going to play late season because we think this is going to be a really good matchup. And then in a year or two, if it isn't, it isn't. But at least you're trying to create more compelling games to get more eyeballs, which, God, I just like, you ever have an epiphany while you're saying something and just realize you hate what you've become? I hate that college football has just become, how can we make more people watch us instead of the regionality, the rivalry. But it is the cruel and twisted world we live in.
They should make the players run to midfield and scoop up the football before determine who gets the ball first. How about that? That would really bring some eyeballs to college football.
Coach Brom knows a little something about that.
Right, exactly. Right, no better man to usher in some XFL rules to college football to make it a little bit spicier for TV. Anything else? I'm ready to move in and talk about some other stuff if you are, man. I know we're going to talk more football and college sports, but I still think that some of these topics are pretty fun here. Anything else to put a bow on that?
I think we are at a very, very weird time in college sports right now. I've got a whole off season to talk about TV economics and scheduling benefits. So for the folks who want to tune in and eat your metaphorical veggies when it comes to college football content, don't worry, I will be serving up plenty for you.
All right, let's do it. What are you talking about? What is catching our attention outside of the Louisville Cardinals? Keith, kick us off.
So you teased it a little bit earlier, and we talked about it very briefly, but Nick Saban and Texas Tech Board of Regents Chairman Cody Campbell are to co-chair the Presidential Commission on College Sports. Pardon me, Ralph Russo of The Athletic put together a very, very solid piece going over this. And essentially what the goal of this commission is to increase regulation as the spending in college sports has gotten out of control. And what I personally believe that's code for is we've got to cap player earnings somehow, because these billionaire boosters can't stop themselves from lighting their money on fire and bidding crazy numbers in free market capitalism to try and create the best programs possible. Because if there's one thing the ultra wealthy can't stand, it's money going to the working class. But there's one thing the ultra wealthy can't stand even more than that, it's losing to their other rich buddies. So why do I think that's the case? Nick Saban, since he's stopped coaching, you've probably noticed him giving testimony and finding himself out in Washington, D.C., talking about college sports a lot. Now, it might just be that he's passionate about the cause. Or it might be that he has been bought and paid for to lobby on behalf of the NCAA to try and sway opinion at a national level, to try and give the institution some iota more of control, despite the fact that they've been violating labor laws for nearly 100 years, if not longer, and also spreading this same propaganda on a national television program on ESPN every day. And then Campbell, the other co-chair, let's not forget about him. Chairman of the Board of Regents, also a very prominent booster, multi-billionaire in... I can't remember the exact term. I know it was paraphrased like take an oil company meets house flippers. So basically he's like starting up oil companies, getting them developed, selling them for billions of dollars. I believe he made $10 billion plus on just his last 2 oil company sales. And he just dumped $25 million to Texas Tech for a contribution for their newest end zone construction project that they have going on. So that's why I sort of believe yeah, the rich people are trying to get government involved like they do in every single other industry to kind of come to an agreement to, hey, let's stop throwing so much money at this. Now, realistically, I don't think anything will happen other than, the miscellaneous grandstanding from your local elected official when it's an election year and you're trying to pander for some votes. At least until the NCAA loses enough times in court for the entity and the member institutions to consider the athletes unionized employees, or whatever frilly language they want to use to make themselves feel good about it, so that some sort of collective bargaining can be agreed to. Once that's reached, you can have multi-year contracts, you can have contract buyouts, but it's just been a frustrating thing because politicians don't care about the sport.
Right.
They care about keeping more of their wealthy lobbyists' money out of the hands of athletes.
I love this, man. This is a full sports, political, economic podcast. But in all actuality, if this ends in any other solution that is not some form of a governing body, that is not the NCAA or a commissioner or a president or a deputy in charge, whatever the hell you want to call them, and a newly formed CBA that protects college athletes, then it is not the system that is going to go forward and flourish. Like that is where they've got to get, because at this point there's no voice representing the athlete, and that is ultimately the best interest in which all of this should be viewed from, in my opinion. They are the ones that are driving the revenue. Look, as much as you can say Nick Saban is the greatest and he gets people to put their butt in the seat, he's a grumpy fucking old man. Like, I'm sorry. Like, there's nothing about Nick Saban that in terms of personality and person that is not replaceable by somebody else. But in this day and age, Nick Saban's grumpy because players all of a sudden need Hellcats every weekend, and he doesn't want to have to deal with that. He just wants to watch film. And meanwhile, Keith, you got Bill Belichick over here with a 23-year-old girlfriend who's living it up, man. Like, but Donald Trump needs to talk to Bill Belichick. That's the guy he needs to talk to.
But, and all that's going to, that whole spiel is like, oh, Keith's just anti-authority and he just wants players to be able to do what they want. No, I hate what college football's become. I would like to actually have a player commit and know that he's going to be at the school for 4 or 5 years, preferably not 6, 7, 24 years. I would like for there to be some reasonable rules on the sport, but I will not condone any sort of laws or regulations that come at the expense of the working class that has not been agreed upon. Just like I don't feel bad for NFL players because their salaries are capped. Because, like, for example, a guy like Patrick Mahomes, you realize how much money he would make in a free market? You realize how the billions Jerry Jones would pay to have Patrick Mahomes on the cap? So look, the NFL, yeah, they're shooting their top earners in the feet because they agreed to capped salary. That's why you see baseball players making just absurd amounts of money because their union held strong. They didn't agree to a salary cap. So if college football players agree to capped earning wages, then fine. They agreed to it. Cool. Right. Let's play ball. But until there's some sort of agreement in place that's been negotiated fairly, no rules. No rules.
And it right now for the players, you don't want there to be rules because you're winning in this system. You're the ones right now that control 99% of what's happening. You have the cards in your hand until you get on campus and you're a part of a team, right? And then at that point, it goes back to normal. Now, I can't tell you what, Dan Furman and the collective heads of the world have been dealing with mid-season of players like, nah, I'm good. I'm not playing against fucking Arkansas Pine Bluff unless you pay me $5,000, right? Like, I don't know what that life is like, but it seems like in all actuality is once you get the guys on the field and on your campus, it goes back to the way of it normally is, and you play ball, and that's how you dictate who the alphas and the who survives and who makes it to the next level. So it's gonna be really interesting to see. I think that there's no business in which Donald Trump should be playing a hand in this unless it's mediating, and I don't think that's what he has any interest in doing right now. I don't think he's mediating shit, right? Like, I think he's just trying to do whatever's going to get him the most favor, and I can respect that, right? Like, you walk into a room, you identify somebody, and you're like, what do you need, right? Then you take care of it, and everybody's like, oh my god. So that's what this is.
And I'm gonna try and not make this political. Let's be honest, he's just gonna go play golf with his buddies, and whatever they come up with, hey, slap my name on it like the lazy kid on a group project,
right?
Because we know where he's at, and plus, if I was 70 some odd years old, I'm not trying to work that fucking hard. I'm trying to go out and play golf, man.
Yeah, this man's trying to make himself the biggest thing in NIL, turn it into, the TikTok 2.0 in college sports. Okay, last thing here, what I'm talking about this weekend, and I feel bad because I've spent all of my extra time in this episode talking about Clemson football, but there is a story at Clemson that I don't think enough people in sports are talking about, and that is the story of one Ian Shefflin. Okay, and if you're not a college basketball junkie, you may not know who that is. Okay, I say that name and you're like, who? But Ian Shefflin might potentially be the most interesting player in college sports right now, because this is a guy who's pulling the Greg Paulus. Yeah, if you're not familiar with Greg Paulus, that's a story and rabbit hole you need to go down right there. But Ian Shefflin last season, and for the last 4 seasons, has played basketball at Clemson. For the last 2, he's been their starting center, was an all ACC player, all ACC tournament first team, has helped Clemson in 2 of their most winningest seasons, going to, I believe, an Elite 8 2 years ago. A guy that's a great player for Clemson. But you may ask how we're getting to this point, right? Ian goes into the portal on the basketball side, runs out of eligibility. And right now in college basketball, guys without eligibility are getting in the portal. Some of that might be happening in college football. I don't know. But in basketball, they're going into the portal in hopes that they may be granted that extra 5th year. And there's a lot of players that are waiting on that. And so as Shefflin is waiting, gets a phone call, Keith. And it's Davon Sweeney. And Davon's like, hey, man, is there anything I can do to get you to play football? Like, come on, man. I think you come out here and be a great player. And Ian Shefflin remembers his days in Grayson High School in Loganville, Georgia, as a 6'5", 220-pound quarterback tight end. But now it's 6'9", 245 pounds. Keith, the former starting center for the Clemson basketball program, is going to play tight end for Clemson football this season. 6'9", 245 pounds. That to me is one of the most interesting stories that no one's talking about in college sports. And as much as I've hated Ian Shefflin on the basketball side, I think I'm going to hate him even more on the football side.
He's soft.
He played the wrong sport. No chance.
No, I could see him potentially being a sort of gimmick formation player, like, oh, we'll use him as like a goal line tight end, or like line him out wide against Ass State or someone, just to like, oh, hey, try to lob him a cheap little goal line touchdown. At a program like Clemson, where they've been recruiting bona fide 4- and 5-star athletes year over year over year out of the high school ranks, I don't think you can seriously bring someone like this in and expect them to be a bona fide contributor. Because if he did show the traits of being an elite football player, the NFL would have drafted his ad. We just saw it with, oh God, I can't remember the kid's name, but he was a basketball player who they just drafted to play tight end, like Antonio Gates.
Yeah, it's Caleb Launer, played at Utah and had played at, I believe, at Baylor before. That was a 4- or 5-star recruit coming out of high school. Yeah, played tight end at Utah. Yeah, got drafted over the weekend for, I think, the Broncos.
And he had like 3 catches for 3 touchdowns because he was a gimmick basketball goal line player.
So I will push back, though, because over the last couple of years, the Indianapolis Colts, Mo Alley Cox, great basketball player at VCU, was a very, very good big man for them during some of their big runs in college basketball. You had Rico, I believe Rico Gathers was his name, played at Baylor, went on to play tight end for the Cowboys. So you have some of these guys. I'm
not saying it can't happen. I'm saying if he was good enough at football, the NFL would have already taken him.
Yeah, and absolutely. Over the years, we've seen guys. I had a good friend from high school, Remy Abel, that played at Xavier, worked out for the Bengals as a potential wide receiver. It happens all the time. Guys that play football go and work out. So it'll be interesting. 6'9" weapon can help you in a lot of ways. If he's a physical guy that can get in there and block, I think he's definitely somebody that presents some mismatch problems in the red zone, probably situationally more than anything. So just cool story though, man. Like, hey, Frank Anselm-Ibe, if you're watching, or Rain Smith or Terrence Edwards, or any of those guys, hey, there's opportunity for you to potentially put on the pads and helmet and get out there for Coach Braun.
Can Chucky put the clamps on a wideout? I'd like another DB.
Hey, that'd be Chucky at DB would be nasty, actually. And I think Frank could play tight end or offensive line. Like, Frank's a physical dude. Like, he's in there and he'd
have to gain a lot of weight.
Yeah, right, of course. But he's getting in there. And George Fant, that's another name. Played basketball here from Bowling Green. Played at Warren Central High School and played a couple of years of basketball down there at Western Kentucky. Played football for a year and then was the starting left tackle for the Jets and for the Seahawks for many years. So it's possible, but definitely not every day that you see that. So that's what I'm talking about. What are you talking about? Let us know. If there's a Louisville basketball player that you think could ever play Louisville football outside of like Josh Chichester, obviously, drop that below. comments, let us know. And be sure you subscribe from the Pink Seats Podcast, anywhere you get your podcast from, right here on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter at Pink Seats Pod, at the State of Lou. And we've got a lot of great content coming out over the next couple of weeks as we roll up on TBT on the basketball side. We've got more food content. We've got more golf content. We've got more things around the city that are happening, events that we're attending. State of Louisville is in more places than it ever has been. So right now, get in there, subscribe, follow us on social media. And we thank you guys for tuning in during the off season, staying up to date on Louisville football. I think we got like 111 days until kickoff, so it is right around the corner. Keith, any closing thoughts?
Go Cards.
Go Cards. We'll catch you next time, ladies and gentlemen.